The Beekeeper's Meadow. Olivia stood in the parking lot of her office building, briefcase in hand, unable to make herself walk inside. It was Monday morning. She had done this exact same walk thousands of times over the past 12 years, but today her feet wouldn't move. She was 41 years old, senior manager at a software company. Good salary, health insurance, retirement plan, everything secure and stable. Everything also meaningless and soul-crushing. Olivia had been feeling the emptiness for years now. Each morning the alarm would sound and she would feel dread settle into her chest. Another day of pointless meetings, another day of managing people who didn't want to be managed, another day of corporate bureaucracy and politics, another day of pretending to care about things that didn't matter. She had tried to push through it, told herself everyone felt this way, that work wasn't supposed to be fulfilling, that she should be grateful for job security. But the emptiness kept growing, becoming harder to ignore. This morning, it had become impossible to ignore. She physically could not make herself enter the building. Her body was refusing, staging a rebellion that her mind couldn't override. Olivia stood frozen for 10 minutes. Other employees walked past her, nodding hello, disappearing into the building. She envied their ability to just do it, to show up and perform their roles without this paralysis. Finally, she turned around. She walked back to her car, got in, and drove away. She called in sick, not entirely a lie. She was sick, just not with anything a doctor could diagnose. She was sick of this life, this work, this version of herself. She drove without destination, just needing to move, to be anywhere but the office. The city gave way to suburbs, then to countryside. Olivia kept driving, feeling something loosen in her chest with each mile. She found herself on a small rural road she had never traveled before. Rolling hills, farm fields, patches of forest. It was beautiful in a quiet way, nothing dramatic, just gentle landscape under blue sky. She saw a hand-painted sign, honey for sale, 1 mile. On impulse, she turned down the dirt road the sign indicated. She wasn't sure why. She didn't particularly need honey. She just needed to keep moving away from her normal life, keep following this thread of spontaneity that had taken over. The road led to a small farmhouse surrounded by meadows. The meadows were full of wildflowers, purple clover, yellow goldenrod, white asters. Olivia could hear bees everywhere, not threatening, just busy, going about their work. The sound was oddly soothing, like a gentle hum filling the air. A woman emerged from a barn, perhaps 60 years old, with gray hair pulled back, wearing overalls and a sun hat. She saw Olivia and waved. "Hello, looking for honey?" the woman called.
"Yes," Olivia said, though honey was the last thing on her mind. She just needed to talk to another human who wasn't part of her corporate world. The woman walked over, pulling off work gloves. "I'm Margaret. Welcome to Honeywood Farm. Come on, I'll show you what we have." She led Olivia into the barn, which had been converted to a honey processing space. There were extractors, bottling equipment, shelves full of honey jars in various sizes. Everything was clean and organized, clearly the work of someone who took their craft seriously. "We produce about 1,500 pounds of honey per year," Margaret explained, "all from our bees here, foraging in the meadows and nearby woods. Different honeys depending on season: spring wildflower, summer clover, fall goldenrod. Each has its own flavor." She handed Olivia a small spoon with a taste of honey. It was delicious, complex and floral, nothing like grocery store honey. Olivia could taste the flowers in it, could taste the sunshine in the meadows. "This is amazing," Olivia said sincerely. "Thank you. It's good honey because the bees have good forage and we treat them well. Happy, healthy bees make the best honey." Margaret studied Olivia. "You look like you need more than honey today. You okay?" The question, asked with such simple kindness, broke something open in Olivia. Tears started falling before she could stop them. She was crying in a stranger's barn, completely losing her composure, and she couldn't even be embarrassed about it. Margaret handed her a clean cloth without fuss. "Come on, let's sit down. I'll make tea." They went into the farmhouse, small and cozy, with simple furniture and windows overlooking the meadows. Margaret made tea while Olivia composed herself. Then they sat at the kitchen table. "Sorry," Olivia said. "I don't usually fall apart like this." "Everyone falls apart sometimes," Margaret said calmly. "Usually means something needs to change. What's going on?" Olivia found herself telling this stranger everything: her empty corporate job, the years of increasing unhappiness, the morning paralysis, the desperate drive into the countryside, how lost she felt, how trapped. Margaret listened without judgment or advice, just patient attention. When Olivia finished, Margaret was quiet for a moment, then said, "I know exactly what you're describing. I felt the same way 20 years ago. I was a lawyer, successful firm, all the trappings, and completely miserable." "What did you do?" Olivia asked. "I quit, bought this farm, started keeping bees, built a completely different life." Smiled. "Best decision I ever made. Scary as hell at the time, but absolutely right." "How did you know it was right? How did you have the courage to do it?" "I didn't know for certain, but I knew staying in my old life was definitely wrong. Sometimes that's enough, knowing you can't continue as you are, even if you're not sure what comes next."
They talked for hours. Margaret told Olivia about her journey, the fear, the challenges, the gradual building of her beekeeping operation, the satisfaction of working with her hands and with nature. She spoke about bees with obvious love and respect. "Bees are amazing teachers," Margaret said. "They work hard, but not from stress, from purpose. They cooperate beautifully. They create something valuable. They're connected to seasons and flowers and natural rhythms. Working with them has taught me how to live better." Olivia was fascinated. She had never thought much about bees beyond swatting them away at picnics. But listening to Margaret, she began to see them differently, not as pests, but as remarkable creatures, master alchemists, turning flowers into gold. "Could I see the hives? I mean, is that safe?" "Sure, I'll suit you up. The bees are gentle if you're calm and respectful." Margaret found a spare bee suit and veil, helped Olivia put them on. Then they walked out to the meadows. Opening a hive for the first time was transformative for Olivia. Thousands of bees moving across frames of honeycomb, each doing their specific work.
nursing young, storing pollen, capping honey cells, maintaining temperature. The organization was astounding. The cooperation was perfect. The whole system hummed with purpose and efficiency. Margaret showed her the queen, larger than the other bees, surrounded by attendants, the heart of the colony. "She's the mother of everyone here," Margaret explained. "But she's not a ruler. She's just doing her role, like all of them. No bee is more important than another. They all contribute." Watching, Olivia was mesmerized. This was nothing like the corporate hierarchies she was used to, with their politics and ego battles. This was pure function, each bee contributing their gift, the whole greater than the parts. They stood in the meadow for a long time, visiting several hives, Margaret explaining the bees' life cycles, their behaviors, their needs. Olivia absorbed it all, fascinated by every detail. When they finally returned to the house, Olivia felt different, calmer, clearer. Something had shifted during those hours with the bees. "Thank you," Olivia said. "I came here just driving randomly, and I found, I'm not sure what, but something important." "You found possibility," Margaret said, "a glimpse of a different way of living. Whether you do anything with that glimpse is up to you, but now you know it's there." Olivia bought several jars of honey. She had to buy something after taking up so much of Margaret's time. But more valuable than the honey was the gift Margaret had given her, the knowledge that change was possible, that others had made radical transformations, that there were ways to live beyond corporate cubicles. Driving home, Olivia felt simultaneously terrified and excited. She had no idea what to do with what she'd experienced, but she knew she couldn't unknow it. She had seen through a door to another kind of life, and she couldn't close that door now.
Olivia returned to work Tuesday, but everything felt different. She went through her meetings and tasks mechanically, but part of her mind was elsewhere, in a meadow with bees, learning about a life so unlike her own. She couldn't stop thinking about Margaret's transformation, lawyer to beekeeper, corporate life to farm life, trapped to free. If Margaret could do it, could Olivia? But what would that look like? Olivia knew nothing about bees or farming. She had no land, no equipment, no experience. The practical barriers seemed insurmountable. Yet the longing wouldn't leave her. She started researching beekeeping obsessively. She read books, watched videos, joined online forums. She learned about bee biology, hive management, honey production, the challenges beekeepers faced. The more she learned, the more fascinated she became. Bees were endlessly interesting. Their communication through dance, their democratic decision-making, their ability to collectively regulate hive temperature, their remarkable navigation, their crucial role in pollinating crops. She also learned that beekeeping wasn't as impossible as she'd thought. People kept bees in suburbs, even in cities. You didn't need a farm, just space for a few hives and flowers nearby. Many beekeepers had regular jobs and kept bees as a serious hobby. Olivia started imagining herself as a beekeeper, coming home from work and checking her hives, harvesting honey on weekends, learning this craft slowly and thoroughly. Eventually, maybe doing it full-time if she could make it work financially. She visited Margaret again the next weekend and the weekend after that. Margaret welcomed her each time, teaching her more about bees, letting her help with hive inspections, explaining the seasonal rhythms of beekeeping. "You're serious about this," Olivia observed after Olivia's third visit. "I think I am," Olivia said. "I can't stop thinking about it, about bees, about this life, about changing everything." "Then you should try it," Margaret said simply. "Start small. Get a couple hives, learn hands-on, see if it really fits you or if it's just fantasy. You won't know until you actually do it." "I'm scared I'll fail. Scared I'll kill the bees through ignorance. Scared I'll invest time and money and discover I'm terrible at it." "Those are valid fears," Margaret acknowledged. "But consider the alternative. What if you don't try? You'll spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been. Is that really better than trying and failing?" Olivia thought about this. Margaret was right. Regret for not trying would be worse than failure from trying. She made a decision. She would get 2 beehives. She would keep them at her suburban house. She had a decent-sized backyard. She would learn by doing, with Margaret as mentor. She would keep her job for now, practice beekeeping seriously on the side, see if it truly called to her. If it did, if after a year or 2 she was still obsessed, still loving it, then she could consider larger changes. But first, she needed to actually try it. Margaret helped her set up. They visited a bee supplier, selected 2 hives with gentle Italian bees. They set up the hives in Olivia's backyard, positioned for good sun and away from her neighbors' properties. Margaret taught her the basics: weekly inspections, checking for disease, adding boxes as bees needed space, preparing for winter. The day Olivia installed her first package of bees was momentous. Thousands of bees pouring from the package into their new home. The queen released from her cage, workers immediately beginning to build comb and organize their space. Olivia felt a surge of something: responsibility, excitement, connection. These bees were now her responsibility. She had to care for them, protect them, help them thrive. It was daunting, but also deeply satisfying in a way her office work never was. She visited her hives every evening after work, just watching the bees come and go, loaded with pollen, busy with their mysterious purposes. The stress of her workday would dissolve as she watched them. The bees didn't care about office politics or project deadlines. They just did their work, connected to flowers and seasons and ancient patterns. Olivia began noticing flowers differently. Before, flowers were just decoration. Now they were bee food, crucial resources. She planted more flowering plants in her yard: lavender, borage, sunflowers, clover. She let part of her lawn go wild to provide diverse forage. Her neighbors noticed. Some were nervous about the bees, but Olivia explained that honeybees were gentle, that they only stung when directly threatened, that they would barely notice the bees were there. She gave them jars of honey when she eventually harvested, which helped change their minds. That first harvest was magical. Margaret helped her extract honey from frames of capped comb. The golden liquid flowing from the extractor seemed miraculous. Flowers transformed into sweetness through bee alchemy. Olivia bottled 40 pounds of honey from her 2 hives. Not much compared to commercial operations, but precious beyond measure because she had helped create it.
She had kept the bees alive and healthy. She had provided the habitat. They had done their work, and together they had made this gold. She gave honey to friends, family, co-workers. Everyone loved it, said it was the best honey they'd ever tasted. Some asked to buy more. Olivia was surprised. There was actually demand for local, small-batch honey. As winter approached, Olivia prepared her hives carefully, following Margaret's instructions, insulating, ensuring adequate food stores, reducing entrances to help bees maintain warmth. She worried about them through the cold months. Would they survive? Had she done enough? When spring came and she saw bees flying again, bringing in pollen from early flowers, Olivia felt profound relief and joy. They had survived. She had successfully kept them through winter. She was really a beekeeper now.
Olivia continued working her corporate job, but lived for her beekeeping time. Evenings and weekends were spent with her hives, learning, observing, caring for her bees. She added 2 more hives in her second year, then 2 more in her third. 6 hives was her backyard's limit, but they produced significant honey, over 200 pounds per year. Olivia sold it at a local farmer's market, charging premium prices for her carefully produced small-batch honey. It sold out every week. She was making decent supplemental income from the honey, but more valuable was the satisfaction. She was creating something real, contributing something valuable, doing work that felt meaningful. Her corporate job, by contrast, felt increasingly absurd. Endless meetings about nothing, projects that got canceled, reorganizations that changed everything and nothing. She was good at her job and kept getting promoted, which only meant more meetings and less actual work. By her 4th year of beekeeping, Olivia was 45 and facing a decision. She had significant savings now. Her salary plus honey sales had allowed her to build a comfortable cushion. She could afford to leave her job if she lived frugally. She could try beekeeping full-time. But it was terrifying. Give up job security, health insurance, steady income? What if she couldn't make enough from bees? What if she failed and couldn't get another corporate job? Yet staying in her job felt increasingly impossible. She was successful and miserable, well paid and empty. The bees had shown her another way of being, and she couldn't unsee it. Margaret encouraged her to try. "You're clearly called to this work," she said. "You have the skills, the dedication, the market. Give yourself a year. If it doesn't work out, you can always go back to corporate work, but I don't think you'll want to." Olivia made the leap. She gave notice at her job. Her boss was shocked, tried to convince her to stay with more money and a better title. But Olivia was done. No amount of money could make that work meaningful to her anymore. Her last day was bittersweet. She had spent 12 years in that building, climbed from junior developer to senior manager. It had given her financial security and career success, but it had never given her joy or purpose. She walked out of the office for the last time feeling both terrified and liberated. No more corporate life, no more safety net, just her and the bees and the question of whether she could actually make this work. Olivia expanded seriously. She couldn't fit more hives in her backyard, so she negotiated with local farmers to place hives on their land. Most were happy to have pollinators for their crops. She ended up with 20 hives spread across 3 locations.
20 hives was manageable for one person with seasonal help. It could produce 600 to 1,000 pounds of honey per year, depending on weather and forage. At her premium prices, that was enough income to live on modestly. But Olivia wanted to do more than just sell honey. She wanted to teach. She wanted to share what bees had given her, not just honey, but perspective, purpose, connection to nature and seasonal rhythms. She started teaching beginner beekeeping classes. They met in her backyard, where students could inspect hives and learn hands-on. She taught the biology, the management techniques, the philosophy behind good beekeeping. Most importantly, she taught respect for bees and appreciation for their gifts. Her classes were popular. Many students were like she had been, burned out on conventional careers, seeking something more meaningful. Beekeeping appealed to them for the same reasons it had appealed to her. Some students just wanted to keep a hive or two as a hobby. Others got seriously into it, expanding to 10 or 20 hives, selling honey commercially. Olivia was proud of them all, proud to be passing forward knowledge the way Margaret had passed it to her.
She also became active in the local beekeeping community. She joined the regional association, attended monthly meetings, learned from experienced beekeepers. She discovered a whole world of people obsessed with bees, willing to talk for hours about genetics and diseases and nectar flows. These were her people, practical, passionate, connected to nature and seasons, doing meaningful work with their hands. They were so different from her former corporate colleagues. No pretension, no politics, just genuine love of craft and willingness to share knowledge. One beekeeper she particularly connected with was a man named Daniel. He was perhaps 50 and had been keeping bees for 25 years, ran a larger operation with 100 hives. He was patient and knowledgeable, willing to mentor less experienced keepers. Daniel and Olivia became friends, then something more. Both had left conventional careers for beekeeping. Both valued simplicity and meaning over money and status. Both found deep satisfaction in working with bees and nature. Their relationship developed slowly, naturally, like honey ripening in comb. No rush, no drama, just two people who understood each other, who shared values and passion, who enjoyed working together and learning together. Daniel had land, 20 acres with meadows and woodland. "You could move your hives here," he suggested one day. "We could work together, combine our operations, build something bigger than either of us could do alone." It was a big step, combining not just beekeeping operations, but lives. But Olivia was ready. She trusted Daniel. She loved working with him. The partnership made sense, both personally and practically. She moved her hives to Daniel's land. They combined their equipment and expertise. They branded their honey together, Meadowbrook honey, small batch sweetness from happy bees. The combined operation had 50 hives, enough to be substantial, but not so many that quality suffered. They sold at farmers markets, through local stores, and via their website. They offered several varieties: spring wildflower, summer clover, fall goldenrod, even small batches of specialty honeys when bees worked specific crops. Their honey developed a reputation. Chefs sought it out. Local food advocates promoted it. People would drive for an hour away to buy it directly from the farm.
Meadowbrook honey became known for quality and integrity. Nothing added, nothing taken away, just pure honey from bees well cared for. But Olivia and Daniel didn't want to grow too large. They could have expanded to hundreds of hives, hired employees, become a significant commercial operation. But that would mean becoming managers again, spending more time on business and less time with bees. They chose to stay relatively small. 50 hives was sustainable for 2 people, allowed them to maintain quality, kept the work hands-on and meaningful. They made enough to live comfortably but modestly. They weren't getting rich, but they weren't trying to. They were trying to live well. As Olivia moved into her early 50s, teaching became increasingly central to her work. She had mastered beekeeping technically, but was now developing wisdom about it, understanding that went beyond technical skills to encompass philosophy and meaning. She expanded her class offerings. She taught beginner courses for people just starting, intermediate courses for those who had kept bees for a year or 2 and wanted to deepen their practice, advanced courses covering specific challenges, disease management, queen rearing, optimizing honey production. But her favorite courses were the ones about bee philosophy, what bees could teach about living well. These attracted people interested in bees, but also in broader questions about meaning, purpose, sustainability, connection with nature. Bees are master teachers, Olivia would tell these students. They show us how to live cooperatively, how to work with purpose, how to create value, how to connect with natural cycles. They're not just insects we exploit for honey, they're partners and guides. She taught about the hive as model of functional community. No bees were selfish. Each contributed their gifts for the good of all. The hive thrived when cooperation was perfect, declined when it broke down. Modern human society has lost this, Olivia said. We're hyper-individualistic, competitive, extractive. But bees show us another way: cooperation, contribution, collective well-being. We could learn from them. She taught about bee democracy. When a hive needed to swarm and find a new home, scout bees would find potential sites and report back. The hive would literally vote. More bees visiting a site meant more votes for it. Eventually, consensus emerged, and the swarm would move to the democratically chosen location. They make collective decisions through informed participation, Olivia explained, not through authority or dominance, but through distributed intelligence. Imagine human democracy working like this. She taught about bees' connection to flowers and seasons. Bees didn't fight against nature, but worked within its rhythms. They gathered when flowers bloomed, rested when they didn't. They prepared for winter, accepted dormancy, emerged renewed in spring. We've tried to transcend seasons and natural limits, Olivia said, to be productive every day, every season, forever. But bees show us that rest is necessary, that fallow times allow renewal, that working with nature is wiser than fighting it. These philosophical classes attracted interesting students, not just aspiring beekeepers, but artists, writers,
therapists, teachers, activists, people interested in bee wisdom applicable to their own work and lives. One student was a therapist named Rachel who specialized in burnout and life transitions. She took Olivia's bee philosophy course and had profound realizations. Bee wisdom applies perfectly to human healing, Rachel told Olivia. Many clients are burned out from working against their own nature, from believing rest is weakness, from hyper-individualism. Bee principles, cooperation, rhythm, working with instead of against, could transform their approach to life. Rachel and Olivia collaborated on workshops combining therapy and bee wisdom, healing through bees, they called them. Participants would learn basic beekeeping, observe hives, and explore how bee principles could inform their own lives. The workshops were transformative for many participants. People dealing with burnout found models for sustainable work. People struggling with isolation discovered wisdom about healthy community. People feeling disconnected from nature reconnected through bees. One participant was a woman named Sandra who was recovering from corporate burnout similar to what Olivia had experienced. Sandra spent a weekend learning about bees, observing their cooperation and purpose, and felt something shift.
Watching the bees work together, each doing their part, no ego or competition, it showed me what I've been missing, Sandra said. I've been trying to do everything alone, competing with everyone, burning myself out. Bees showed me another way. Sandra eventually quit her corporate job and became a community organizer, applying bee principles of cooperation and collective well-being to social justice work. She stayed in touch with Olivia, crediting bees with showing her the path to meaningful work. Stories like this reminded Olivia why teaching mattered. She wasn't just teaching beekeeping skills, she was sharing wisdom that could transform lives, the way Margaret's teaching had transformed hers. Olivia also developed programs for schools. She would bring observation hives, glass-sided hives where students could safely watch bees at work. Children were fascinated, asking endless questions about bee behavior. Why do they dance? How does the queen choose her job? Don't they get tired? Do bees sleep? Why do they make so much honey? Olivia loved children's questions. They saw wonder where adults saw utility. They asked why and how instead of how much and how fast. They approached bees with curiosity instead of fear. She taught children about pollination, about how a third of our food depends on bees, about environmental challenges threatening pollinators. She wanted them to grow up appreciating bees, understanding their importance, caring about their protection. Some schools created their own beehives after Olivia's visits. Teachers would use the hives for ongoing education, biology lessons, obviously, but also math, calculating honey production, writing, journaling about bee observations, art, drawing bees and flowers, even social studies, comparing bee societies to human societies. These school programs planted seeds that might grow in unexpected directions. Maybe some children would become beekeepers. Maybe others would become biologists or environmentalists. Maybe all would simply grow up respecting bees and nature, valuing cooperation and sustainability.
Beekeeping wasn't all sweetness and meadow meditation. Olivia faced challenges that tested her commitment and forced her to grow. The first major challenge was a disease outbreak. One spring, Olivia noticed several hives were weak, few bees flying, brood patterns spotty, hives declining rapidly. Testing confirmed American foul brood, a bacterial disease that kills bee larvae. Foul brood was serious. It spread easily between hives. Infected equipment had to be destroyed. The only reliable treatment for established infections was burning the hives, the frames, everything. Olivia was devastated. She had to destroy 6 hives, losing thousands of bees and all the equipment. The financial loss was significant, but worse was the emotional loss. She felt responsible, felt she had failed the bees. Daniel helped her through it. "Disease happens," he said. "You didn't cause it. You're dealing with it responsibly. That's all you can do. Learn from it, tighten your management, move forward."
Olivia learned to be more vigilant about inspections, to catch problems earlier, to maintain better records, to think about biosecurity. The foul brood outbreak taught her painful but valuable lessons about the responsibilities of beekeeping. Another challenge was environmental. A nearby farmer sprayed pesticides on his crops during bloom when Olivia's bees were foraging there. The result was mass bee deaths, thousands of dead bees in front of affected hives, dead bees in the fields, colonies devastated. Olivia was furious. Those bees had died because of careless pesticide use. She confronted the farmer, educated him about bees' importance and vulnerability, asked him to spray at night when bees weren't foraging, or to use less toxic products. The farmer was defensive at first, but eventually agreed to change his practices. But the damage was done. Olivia had lost several colonies and would need to rebuild. This experience pushed Olivia toward activism. She joined groups advocating for pollinator protection, for restrictions on harmful pesticides, for agricultural practices that supported bees and other pollinators. She testified at local government meetings, wrote letters to agricultural agencies, educated farmers about pollinator-friendly practices. It was frustrating work. Change came slowly, if at all. Economic interests resisted regulation. Many people didn't understand why bees mattered. But Olivia persisted. If beekeeping was her vocation, advocacy was her responsibility. Climate change also affected her beekeeping. Weather patterns were becoming more erratic. Springs came earlier, confusing bees' timing. Summers were hotter and drier, reducing nectar flows. Falls were unpredictable, sometimes extended warmth, sometimes early freezes. Winters were milder, but with occasional severe cold snaps. These changes required adaptation. Olivia learned to be flexible, to adjust management to actual conditions rather than calendar dates, to help bees cope with climate stress through strategic feeding and careful hive placement. But she couldn't fix the underlying problem. Climate change was happening. It would continue affecting bees and all pollinators.
The best she could do was manage adaptively and advocate for climate action. These challenges, disease, pesticides, climate change, were sobering. Beekeeping wasn't just peaceful work with nature. It was navigating a world where human activities threatened the creatures she cared for. But the challenges also deepened Olivia's commitment. Bees needed advocates, needed people who understood their importance and would fight for their protection. She would be that person. Keeping bees meant not just managing hives, but working to create a world where bees could thrive. One winter was particularly difficult. An unusually severe cold snap killed 12 of Olivia and Daniel's 50 hives. Opening those hives in spring and finding dead bees was heartbreaking. Each colony represented a year of work, thousands of individual lives, the promise of future honey and pollination. Olivia grieved. She had to let herself feel the loss, acknowledge that bees were more to her than just agricultural animals. They were companions, teachers, partners. Losing them hurt. Daniel grieved too. They supported each other through it, rebuilt together, learned from the losses. Their relationship deepened through shared difficulty. They weren't just romantic partners, but true partners in work, supporting each other through challenges as well as successes. By late spring, they had replaced the lost colonies and were back to full strength. The new bees built comb, raised brood, gathered nectar. Life continued. The hives recovered. Work went on. These cycles of loss and renewal, death and rebirth, failure and recovery, they were part of beekeeping, part of working with living things, part of life itself. Olivia learned to accept them, to grieve losses without drowning in grief, to celebrate successes without assuming they would last forever.
As Olivia's reputation as beekeeper and teacher grew, she attracted more than just students. She attracted a community of people interested in sustainable living, local food, environmental stewardship, meaningful work. Her farm became a gathering place. She started hosting monthly potlucks where people interested in bees, gardening, local food, and simple living could connect. 20 or 30 people would come, bringing homemade dishes, sitting in the meadow, sharing stories and ideas. These gatherings built community in a way Olivia had never experienced. Everyone there valued similar things: connection with nature, working with hands, living sustainably, supporting local economies. They traded seeds and plants, shared surplus produce, helped each other with projects. One regular attendee was a woman named Carmen who ran a small organic farm. She and Olivia partnered. Carmen's farm provided excellent bee forage. Olivia's bees pollinated Carmen's crops. They coordinated plantings to provide continuous bloom. They sold their products together at markets. Another regular was a man named Tom, who was a carpenter specializing in natural building. He and Daniel designed and built a beautiful new honey house for processing and bottling, timber frame construction with large windows looking over the meadows. The community began collaborating on larger projects. They created a tool library where members could borrow expensive equipment rather than everyone buying their own. They organized bulk buying of organic seeds and sustainable supplies. They established a work exchange network where people could trade skills.
This was the kind of community Olivia had longed for without knowing it. People supporting each other, sharing resources, working toward common values. It was so different from the competitive, isolated world of corporate work. The community also supported environmental initiatives. They restored degraded land to pollinator habitat. They planted thousands of trees and native plants. They advocated for reduced pesticide use and protection of wild spaces. Olivia helped lead many of these efforts. Her beekeeping had evolved into broader environmental stewardship. She understood now that you couldn't separate bee health from ecosystem health, couldn't protect pollinators without protecting entire landscapes. She also started mentoring aspiring professional beekeepers more intensively. Several of her advanced students wanted to make beekeeping their livelihood. Olivia developed a year-long apprenticeship program where students worked alongside her and Daniel, learning every aspect of professional beekeeping. The apprentices lived on the property in a small cabin, worked 40 hours per week managing hives and processing honey, and received comprehensive training plus a small stipend. By the end of the year, they were competent beekeepers ready to start their own operations.
Many of Olivia's apprentices went on to establish successful beekeeping businesses. They spread throughout the region, each developing their own style, but all maintaining high standards and ethical practices. They formed a network, supporting each other, referring customers, sharing equipment. This network multiplied Olivia's impact. She couldn't personally keep more than 50 hives, but through students and apprentices, she influenced the management of hundreds of hives. Her approach to beekeeping, careful, ethical, focused on bee welfare, spread through her students' practices. One apprentice, a young woman named Emma, was particularly talented. She had passion, dedication, and natural intuition with bees. After her apprenticeship year, Emma started her own operation with 20 hives. Within 5 years, she had grown to 60 hives and was teaching her own beginning beekeeping classes. "You created this path for me," Emma told Olivia. "Before I met you, I didn't know beekeeping could be a career, didn't know this kind of life was possible. You showed me the way. Now I'm trying to show others." These moments of impact, seeing students flourish and pass knowledge forward, gave Olivia deep satisfaction. She was creating not just honey, but legacy, a community of beekeepers who shared values and practices, who would continue this work long after she was gone. As Olivia moved through her 50s and into her 60s, she continued keeping bees, but also stepped back to make space for others. She reduced her active hive count, handed more responsibility to Daniel and their apprentices, focused more on teaching and mentoring. She had become an elder in the beekeeping community, not because of age alone, but because of accumulated wisdom. People sought her advice on complex problems, asked her to mediate disputes, invited her to judge honey competitions and speak at conferences. Olivia accepted some of these opportunities, but was selective. She didn't want to become too busy with community service to actually work with bees. The bees themselves remained her primary teachers and her greatest joy. Her teaching had matured, too. She was less focused on technical instruction and more focused on wisdom and philosophy. She could teach basic skills in her sleep. She'd taught hundreds of beginners by now. But she was more interested in deeper questions. She developed a special course called Bee Wisdom for Modern Life that explored what bees could teach about sustainable living, cooperative work, democratic decision-making, environmental stewardship. The course attracted people from diverse backgrounds, many not even interested in keeping bees, but fascinated by bee wisdom. Bees have been successful for millions of years, Olivia would tell these students. Humans have only existed for a few 100,000 years, and we're already creating existential crises. Maybe we should pay attention to what older, wiser species can teach us. She talked about how bees managed resources sustainably, never depleting their environment. Bees take only what they need from flowers, leaving enough for the plant and for other pollinators. Humans extract until exhaustion. We could learn from bee restraint. She discussed how bees made decisions collectively through informed participation. When a hive decides where to swarm, every bee who finds a potential site reports back. The hive considers all options, and consensus emerges naturally. Compare that to human decision-making, dominated by powerful voices, ignoring distributed knowledge. We could learn from bee democracy. She explored bee communication, how bees shared information through dance, pheromones, and vibration. Bees communicate clearly and honestly. They don't lie or manipulate. They share what they know for the good of all. Human communication is often strategic, deceptive, self-serving. We could learn from bee honesty. These philosophical courses resonated deeply with many students. They left not just with bee knowledge, but with shifted perspectives on life, work, community, nature. Some made significant changes based on what they learned, leaving unfulfilling work, simplifying their lives, engaging more in community, reducing their environmental impact. One student, a businessman in his 50s, told Olivia, "Your course changed how I see everything. I've been living like capitalism is the only way. Compete, maximize profit, exploit resources. But bees show a completely different way. Cooperate, sustain resources, contribute to whole. I'm restructuring my business around these principles." These transformations reminded Olivia of her own transformation years ago. She had been that burned-out person seeking meaning. Margaret had shown her bees, and everything changed. Now Olivia was doing the same for others, continuing the cycle of teaching and transformation. She also wrote extensively now. She published articles in beekeeping journals, environmental magazines, sustainability publications. She wrote about technical beekeeping topics, but also about philosophy, about what bees could teach a world in crisis. Her writing attracted wide attention. Environmentalists cited her work. Educators used her articles in courses.
policymakers referenced her arguments for pollinator protection. Her influence extended far beyond her local beekeeping community. A publisher approached her about writing a book. They wanted a comprehensive work about bees, their biology, their management, their ecological importance, their wisdom. Olivia agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to synthesize everything she had learned. Writing the book took 3 years. Olivia worked on it during winter months when beekeeping was less demanding. She poured everything she knew into it: technical information, practical guidance, philosophical reflection, personal stories. She wanted it to be useful for beginners, but also meaningful for experienced beekeepers, accessible to general readers, but respected by scientists. The Beekeeper's Wisdom: Lessons from the Hive for Living Well was published when Olivia was 64. It became a surprise bestseller, appealing to multiple audiences. Beekeepers valued its practical guidance. Environmentalists appreciated its ecological perspective. People interested in sustainable living loved its philosophical insights. The book's success brought more opportunities: speaking engagements, interviews, consulting requests. Olivia accepted some selectively, but stayed grounded in her primary work. She was still, fundamentally, a beekeeper. Everything else was secondary. Daniel supported her completely through all of this. He was content managing most of the daily beekeeping, while Olivia taught and wrote and traveled occasionally. Their partnership was strong, built on shared values and genuine respect. They had been together almost 20 years now, had built a beautiful life together. Their relationship wasn't dramatic or passionate in conventional ways. It was steady, supportive, nourishing, like bees working together, each doing their part, the whole greater than either individual.
As Olivia moved through her late 60s, she thought increasingly about legacy. She and Daniel had built something valuable, not just a honey business, but a community, a teaching program, an approach to beekeeping that balanced production with sustainability and bee welfare. What would happen to all this when they eventually retired or died? They had no children. They needed to ensure their work continued through others. They decided to establish a non-profit, the Bee Wisdom Institute. Its mission was to teach beekeeping, promote pollinator protection, support sustainable agriculture, and share bee wisdom with wider audiences. The Institute would offer the apprenticeship program, teach classes, conduct research, advocate for policy changes protecting pollinators, and maintain a demonstration apiary where people could learn about bees. Olivia and Daniel donated their land to the Institute, ensuring it would remain dedicated to bees and education even after they were gone. They recruited a board of directors from the community they had built: beekeepers, environmentalists, educators, farmers. The Institute attracted funding from foundations interested in sustainable agriculture and environmental education. It grew beyond what Olivia and Daniel could have accomplished alone, employing staff, serving hundreds of students annually, influencing policy at state level. Olivia served as founding director for several years, then transitioned to advisor as younger people took leadership.
She was pleased to step back to let the next generation lead, while she focused on what she loved most, the bees themselves, and teaching people who came to learn directly from her. One of those younger leaders was Emma, her former apprentice, who had become an accomplished beekeeper and teacher. Emma became the Institute's director, bringing energy and vision while maintaining the values Olivia had established. "You created this," Emma told Olivia. "You started with 2 hives in your backyard and built it into a movement. Now we're reaching thousands of people, protecting thousands of acres of pollinator habitat, training dozens of new beekeepers every year. Your influence keeps multiplying." Olivia was humble about it. "I just followed what called to me," she said. "I had good teachers who showed me the way. I'm passing forward what was given to me. That's all any of us can do." But privately, she felt proud and satisfied. She had lived well. She had done meaningful work. She had helped many people. She had contributed something valuable that would continue after she was gone. She thought often about Margaret, her first teacher. Margaret had died several years ago at 93, still keeping a few hives until the very end. Olivia had spoken at her memorial, honoring the woman who transformed her life with generosity and wisdom. "Margaret showed me bees," Olivia had said. "But more than that, she showed me transformation was possible, that I could build a completely different life, that meaningful work existed beyond corporate cubicles. Everything good in my life traces back to that first visit to her farm, to her willingness to teach a stranger who wandered in looking for honey and found her path instead." Now Olivia was doing for others what Margaret had done for her. The cycle continued. Teacher taught student, student became teacher, taught their own students, extending the lineage forward through time. Olivia still kept a few hives for her own enjoyment. She didn't need to keep bees for income anymore. The Institute supported her, and she had savings. She kept bees purely for love of it, for the meditation of hive inspections, for the joy of watching bees work, for the sweet satisfaction of harvest. Working with bees never got old. After 25 years, she still felt wonder watching them, still learned something new regularly, still received wisdom from their example. One spring afternoon, Olivia sat in her meadow watching bees work the flowers. Thousands of bees from dozens of hives, gathering nectar, collecting pollen, doing their ancient work. The hum filled the air like a living, breathing presence. She felt profound gratitude for Margaret, who had taught her, for Daniel, who had built this life with her, for all the students who had learned and carried knowledge forward, for the bees themselves who had given her purpose and meaning. She had transformed from stressed corporate manager to peaceful beekeeper, from lost to found, from empty to full. The journey had been challenging but rewarding beyond measure. Looking at her life now, Olivia couldn't imagine having stayed in corporate work. That woman sitting paralyzed in the office parking lot seemed like a stranger. She had been sleepwalking through life, performing a role that wasn't hers. Bees had woken her up, had shown her another way, had given her work that engaged her completely, body, mind, heart, spirit. She had found her calling, and it had given her life meaning. Not everyone's calling was bees, but everyone had a calling, work that truly fit them, that brought them alive, that contributed something valuable. Most people never found it, stayed stuck in unfulfilling work because change seemed too scary or impossible. Olivia's message to those people was simple. Change is possible. Transformation is achievable. You can build a different life. It requires courage, yes, but staying stuck requires its own kind of suffering, often worse than the risk of change. Follow what calls to you. Listen to your deep knowing. Trust that the path will reveal itself when you take first steps. Be willing to learn, to start over, to build slowly. Have patience with yourself and faith in the process. And find teachers. Olivia couldn't have done this alone. She needed Margaret's guidance, Daniel's partnership, the community's support. No one transforms in isolation. We need each other. The bees taught this too. Individual bees couldn't survive alone. They needed the hive, needed cooperation and mutual support. Humans were the same. We needed community, needed teachers and partners and friends. We were meant to live and work together, supporting each other's growth and flourishing. As evening fell and bees returned to their hives for the night, Olivia stood and walked through the meadow, saying good night to each hive. "Thank you," she whispered to the bees, "for everything. For the honey, yes, but more for the teaching, for showing me how to live." The bees hummed their evening song, settling in for the night, and Olivia walked back to the house where Daniel waited, where dinner was ready, where her good life continued, sweet and full and satisfying as honey.
Olivia died peacefully at 86. She had been in her meadow checking hives on a beautiful June morning when her heart simply stopped. She died surrounded by flowers and bees, doing the work she loved, exactly where she belonged. Her memorial was held in the meadow, attended by hundreds of people, students, fellow beekeepers, community members, environmental activists. Hives surrounded the gathering, bees working the flowers, their hum providing a living soundtrack. Emma spoke about Olivia's teaching. She didn't just teach beekeeping, she taught a way of being, attentive, respectful, cooperative, sustainable. She showed us that work could be meaningful, that we could partner with nature, that simple living aligned with values brought more satisfaction than wealth or status. Everyone she taught carries these lessons forward. Daniel, now in his 90s, spoke about their partnership. Olivia and I built a beautiful life together. We worked side by side with the bees for over 30 years. She taught me so much about bees, about life, about what really matters. I'll miss her every day, but I'm grateful for every moment we had. Carmen, her farmer friend, talked about Olivia's environmental work. She understood that protecting bees meant protecting entire ecosystems. She worked tirelessly for pollinator-friendly policies, for habitat restoration, for agricultural practices that supported life rather than destroying it. Her advocacy influenced policy changes that protect millions of pollinators. Sandra,
the former corporate refugee who had found her calling through Olivia's Bee Wisdom course, shared, "Olivia showed me that transformation was possible. I was burned out, empty, lost. Her teaching about bees, about cooperation and purpose and working with natural rhythms gave me a template for rebuilding my life. I'm not a beekeeper, but I carry bee wisdom into my work every day." Many others spoke, each sharing how Olivia had influenced them. The stories revealed someone who had lived with integrity, who had followed her calling completely, who had generously shared what she learned, who had made real differences in individual lives and broader movements. After the memorial, attendees participated in a ritual planting. Each person planted a flower in the meadow: cosmos, sunflowers, borage, clover, all bee favorites. Together, they created a new section of pollinator garden dedicated to Olivia's memory. As people planted and the bees worked the existing flowers, unaware or unconcerned about the human ceremony, the continuity was evident. Olivia was gone, but the work continued. The bees continued. The teaching continued. The movement towards sustainable, meaningful, cooperative ways of living continued. The Bee Wisdom Institute continued thriving under Emma's leadership. It expanded its programs, reached more people, protected more habitat. Olivia's book remained in print, inspiring new generations of beekeepers and seekers. Her influence rippled forward through all the people she had taught and all the people they would teach. 20 years after Olivia's death, a woman named Julia stood in an office parking lot, unable to make herself go inside. She was 39, successful marketing executive, completely burned out and empty. She had been reading Olivia's book the night before. The story of corporate burnout and transformation through beekeeping resonated deeply. Julia had stayed up until 2 a.m. reading, unable to put it down, feeling seen and understood in a way she rarely felt.
Now, standing in the parking lot, Julia made a decision. She couldn't do this anymore. She couldn't keep living a life that was slowly crushing her soul. She needed to change, to find her own path, to discover what truly called to her. She got in her car and drove, not to her office, but out of the city into the countryside. She drove without clear destination, just following the road, following the pull towards something different. She saw a sign, the Bee Wisdom Institute, tours and classes. On impulse, she turned down the driveway. The meadows were full of flowers and hives, just as Olivia's had been. Bees worked everywhere, their hum filling the air. Julia parked and got out, breathing deeply of air that smelled like honey and flowers and living earth. A young woman approached, a teacher at the institute. "Hello, would you like a tour?" "Yes," Julia said, and as she followed the teacher into the meadows, toward the hives where bees worked their ancient magic, Julia felt something begin to shift inside her. She didn't know it yet, but she had just taken her first step on a transformative journey. She would learn about bees, discover her calling, build a new life. She would become another link in the chain extending from Margaret to Olivia to Emma to herself and onward into the future. The golden thread continued weaving through time. Teacher taught student, student became teacher. The knowledge flowed forward. Bees continued their work. Humanity continued learning from them. The partnership between people and pollinators continued evolving. Olivia's path had become a highway. Her 2 backyard hives had become a movement. Her personal transformation had helped spark countless others. She lived on, not in the physical world, but through influence, through students she taught, books she wrote, institutes she founded, values she modeled. And somewhere, always, someone was discovering bees, finding wonder in their cooperation and wisdom in their ways, beginning to imagine a different kind of life, taking first steps toward transformation. The beekeeper's meadow continues calling. The golden thread continues weaving. The teaching flows on and on, sweet as honey, enduring as flowers bloom and bees gather nectar, eternal as the ancient partnership between humans and the humming gold makers. Sleep now, dear listener. Let Olivia's story wrap around you like warm honeycomb. Know that transformation awaits, that meaningful work calls, that you too can find your path. Rest deeply. Dream of meadows and bees, of flowers and honey, of lives transformed through courage and partnership with nature. All is well. The bees remember. The meadow continues. The wisdom flows. Now and forever. Golden and sweet. The hum goes on. Sweet dreams.
The Bee Wisdom Institute's influence continued growing through Olivia's 70s. What had started as her personal teaching practice had become a regional center for bee education, pollinator protection, and sustainable agriculture advocacy. The Institute now had a permanent staff of 5, Director Emma, 3 instructors, and an outreach coordinator. They taught over 200 students annually, from beginners taking weekend workshops to serious students completing year-long apprenticeships. But Olivia remained the heart of the Institute. She taught advanced seminars for experienced beekeepers, mentored instructors, and led the popular Bee Wisdom courses that attracted non-beekeepers interested in applying insect intelligence to human challenges. One of her most innovative programs brought together unlikely groups, corporate leaders and bees. Companies would send executives for day-long workshops where they observed hives, learned about bee cooperation and decision-making, then discussed applications to business. Bees run organizations better than most humans, Olivia would tell these executives. No ego battles, no hoarding information, no optimizing for individual gain at expense of collective good, just pure function, each bee contributing their gift, transparent communication, decisions made for benefit of whole. Imagine your company working like this. Some executives dismissed it as cute but irrelevant, but others had real breakthroughs.
One CEO restructured his company based on bee principles, flattening hierarchy, increasing transparency, rewarding cooperation over competition. The company's performance and employee satisfaction both improved significantly. He credited Olivia. The bee workshop wasn't some feel-good team-building exercise. It was genuine organizational wisdom from a successful model. Bees have perfected cooperation over millions of years. We'd be foolish not to learn from them. Stories like this pleased Olivia. Bee wisdom wasn't just for beekeepers or environmentalists. It could transform how humans organized work, made decisions, related to each other and to nature. She was helping bridge ancient insect wisdom and modern human challenges. The Institute also deepened its environmental work. They managed 200 acres of pollinator habitat restoration, former degraded farmland converted to flowering meadows. They provided free habitat design consultations to farmers, schools, and municipalities. They advocated for pesticide regulations and land use policies supporting pollinators. This advocacy work was often frustrating. Economic interests resisted change. Political will was inconsistent. Progress came slowly, measured in small policy victories and individual landowner decisions. But Olivia persevered. She testified at regulatory hearings, met with legislators, wrote opinion pieces for newspapers. She became known as a credible voice on pollinator protection, not shrill or ideological, but informed, practical, focused on solutions. Her advocacy was effective partly because she wasn't just an environmentalist, but a working beekeeper. She spoke from experience about what bees needed, about agricultural practices that supported both farmers and pollinators, about balancing economic and ecological concerns.
One significant victory was a county ordinance limiting pesticide use on public lands and requiring buffer zones near schools and waterways. Olivia had worked 3 years building coalition support, educating officials, compromising on language. When it finally passed, she felt profound satisfaction. Small victory, she told Emma, but it protects thousands of acres of pollinator habitat, probably saves millions of native bees and countless honeybees, worth 3 years of work. These environmental efforts attracted younger activists to the Institute. Young people passionate about climate justice, biodiversity protection, sustainable agriculture. They brought energy and fresh perspectives. Olivia welcomed them, learned from them, integrated their concerns into the Institute's work. One young activist named Maya became particularly involved. She was 24, had studied environmental science, was drawn to beekeeping as climate action. Bees are indicator species, Maya explained. If we create landscapes where bees thrive, we're creating landscapes that support all life. Beekeeping is environmental justice work. Maya's framing resonated with Olivia. She had always understood her work as environmental, but Maya helped her see it explicitly as justice work, ensuring future generations had functioning ecosystems, protecting vulnerable communities from agricultural toxins, democratizing food production through support for small farms and pollinators. The Institute added an environmental justice track to its programming, teaching connections between bee health, ecosystem health, and human health. They recruited diverse students, offered scholarships for people from marginalized communities, partnered with urban agriculture projects.
This expansion felt right to Olivia. Beekeeping couldn't just be a hobby for privileged people with land and resources. It needed to be accessible to everyone, especially communities most affected by environmental degradation and food insecurity.
Olivia's 70s also brought challenges that tested her physically and spiritually. Her body was aging. Arthritis made hive work harder. Her back ached after inspections. She moved more slowly, tired more easily. She had to accept limitations. She couldn't manage 50 hives anymore. She reduced to 20, then to 10. She hired help for heavy work, lifting honey supers, moving equipment. She focused on teaching and lighter management tasks. Accepting physical decline was humbling. Olivia had prided herself on capability, on doing her own work. Now she needed help. It felt like failure, though intellectually she knew it was just aging. Daniel helped her reframe it. "You're not failing," he said gently. "You're transitioning. You've done the physical work for decades. Now you focus on wisdom work, teaching, mentoring, guiding. That's equally valuable, maybe more valuable." Olivia tried to believe this. She refocused on teaching, on writing, on advisory roles. She spent more time with individual students, offering deep mentorship rather than basic instruction. She worked on a second book about bee wisdom and human challenges. But she missed the physical work, missed being in hives daily, missed the meditation of inspections, missed the direct relationship with bees. Teaching about bees wasn't the same as being with bees. The bees taught her about letting go. Worker bees aged and died routinely, replaced by new workers. Queens were eventually superseded by daughter queens. Hives changed constantly, yet remained essentially themselves. Identity wasn't fixed, but flowing, continuously renewing. Could Olivia be like that? Could she release her identity as active beekeeper and accept her evolving role as elder teacher? Could she trust that others would carry the work forward while she gracefully stepped back? It was hard, but she worked on it. She practiced acceptance, focused on gratitude for what she'd done rather than grief for what she couldn't do anymore. She celebrated the younger people doing the physical work she had loved. A health scare also challenged her. She developed a heart arrhythmia that required medication and lifestyle changes. Suddenly, mortality felt very real. She was 76. She might have 10 good years left, maybe 20, maybe fewer. How did she want to spend them? She decided to focus on what truly mattered. She reduced committee work and administrative tasks. She declined most speaking invitations. She protected time for direct teaching, for working with her remaining hives, for writing, for simply being present with life. Olivia also worked on healing old relationships. She had been estranged from her brother for years over a financial dispute. She reached out, apologized for her part, expressed desire to reconnect. They reconciled, began visiting regularly, rebuilt their relationship. "Life's too short for grudges," Olivia told Emma. "The heart scare reminded me. What matters is connection, love, doing your work well. Everything else is noise." The health challenges also deepened Olivia's teaching. She spoke more openly about mortality, about what bees taught about life cycles, about the freedom that comes from accepting impermanence. Bees don't fear death, she told her students. Individual bees die constantly, but the superorganism, the hive, continues. They don't cling to individual survival. They serve the whole, then complete their cycle gracefully. We could learn from that acceptance. Some students found this morbid, but others, especially older students, resonated deeply. One student, a woman dying of cancer, told Olivia, "Your teaching about bee death helps me face my own death. Bees show that individual death doesn't negate life's meaning. The work continues, the cycle renews. There's comfort in that." These conversations moved Olivia. She was doing more than teaching beekeeping. She was sharing wisdom about living and dying, about finding meaning, about accepting our place in larger cycles.
Olivia's second book, Bee Wisdom for a World in Crisis, was published when she was 78. It was more philosophical than her first book, less focused on beekeeping how-to, and more on what bees could teach about addressing climate change, biodiversity loss, social inequality, and other human challenges. She wrote about bee cooperation as model for addressing climate crisis. Climate change requires unprecedented global cooperation, she wrote. Bees show us how. Transparent communication, decisions made for collective good, willingness to sacrifice individual benefit for survival of whole. We desperately need to learn these skills. She explored bee resource management as lesson in sustainability. Bees never exhaust their environment. They take only surplus nectar, leaving enough for plants and other pollinators. They prepare for lean times by storing excess from abundant times. Humans extract until collapse, consume without regard for limits. We need bee wisdom about working within boundaries. She discussed bee decision-making as alternative to authoritarian and oversimplified democratic systems. When hives decide where to swarm, they use distributed intelligence. Every informed bee participates. Best information rises naturally. Consensus emerges organically. No single bee dominates. No bee ignores others' knowledge. Imagine human systems working like this. The book resonated widely. Environmentalists, social activists, philosophers, political theorists all found value in it. It was reviewed positively in diverse publications. It sold better than her first book, reaching audiences beyond beekeeping circles. The book's success brought opportunities Olivia declined. Television producers wanted to make a documentary about her. A university offered an honorary doctorate and visiting professorship. A foundation wanted her to lead a major pollinator protection initiative. She turned them all down. She was tired. She wanted to focus on what she loved, working with bees she still kept, teaching people who came to learn directly from her, writing when inspired, spending time with Daniel and close friends. "I've done my work," she told Emma when explaining why she declined the foundation offer. "Others can do that important work now. I want to spend my remaining time and energy simply doing what brings me joy, being fully present rather than constantly achieving." Emma understood. "You've earned rest. You've given so much. It's okay to focus on yourself now." But Olivia wasn't really resting. She was writing steadily. Articles, blog posts, working on a third book that was more memoir than instruction.
She was teaching small groups intensively rather than large workshops superficially. She was mentoring a few select students very deeply. This focused work felt right. She had spent years building broadly, growing her operation, teaching hundreds of students, establishing the institute, influencing policy. Now she was building deeply, going profound with a few rather than surface level with many. One student she mentored intensively was a young man named Raphael. He was 26, had discovered beekeeping after reading Olivia's first book, had apprenticed at the institute, and now wanted to dedicate his life to bees. Olivia saw herself in Raphael, the passion, the dedication, the sense of calling. She took him on as special mentee, teaching him everything she knew, sharing not just technique, but philosophy, passing on accumulated wisdom from 40 years with bees. "You're carrying this forward," she told Raphael, "not just beekeeping, but the values, respect for bees, commitment to their welfare, understanding them as teachers, integrating ecological and social awareness. These can't die with my generation. You're the future." Raphael took the responsibility seriously. He studied diligently, asked deep questions, practiced with dedication. He understood he wasn't just learning a trade, but receiving a legacy, a lineage of knowledge and values, stretching from Margaret through Olivia to himself and beyond. Watching Raphael develop gave Olivia deep satisfaction. She was seeing the chain extend, seeing her influence multiply forward through time. Raphael would teach others who would teach others, extending infinitely into future. This was true legacy, not monuments or fame, but knowledge transmitted, values embodied, work continued by others who shared commitment and vision.
When Olivia turned 80, the community organized a celebration at the Institute. Over 300 people came, former students, fellow beekeepers, environmental allies, friends from decades of work. The celebration was held in the main meadow, surrounded by 50 hives. The Institute now kept many hives for educational purposes. Speeches honored Olivia's contributions. People shared stories about how she had influenced them. Musicians played. Food was abundant, much of it produced by farmers Olivia had supported over the years. Olivia was embarrassed by the attention, but also touched. She hadn't realized how many people she had affected, how far her influence had spread. Students she barely remembered spoke about how her brief teachings had changed their trajectories. People she had never met talked about finding her books at crucial moments. Daniel spoke about their partnership. "Olivia and I have spent 35 years together, most of it working side by side with bees. She's been my teacher, my partner, my best friend. She showed me that work could be sacred, that simple living was rich living, that bees were wise teachers. I'm grateful for every day we've shared." Emma talked about Olivia's teaching legacy. Olivia has trained hundreds of beekeepers directly and thousands indirectly through her books and the Institute. But more than technique, she teaches values: bee welfare over profit, cooperation over competition, sustainability over extraction, wisdom over mere knowledge. These values infuse everyone she touches. Raphael shared what Olivia meant to younger generation. I'm 26. My generation faces catastrophic climate change, ecosystem collapse, social chaos. We need wisdom about living differently. Olivia provides that wisdom, not abstract theory, but embodied practice. She shows that humans can partner with nature, can live sustainably, can find meaning in work that heals rather than harms. That's what my generation desperately needs. When it was Olivia's turn to speak, she was emotional but composed. She talked about her journey from corporate burnout to beekeeping fulfillment. She honored Margaret, her first teacher, and Daniel, her partner. She celebrated all the students who had learned and carried knowledge forward. I'm just one person who followed what called to her, Olivia said. I had good teachers, was part of supportive community, and lived at a time when such transformation was possible. My satisfaction comes not from personal achievement, but from contribution, helping bees, teaching people, supporting environmental health. That's all any of us can do. Find our gift and give it fully. She ended with gratitude. Thank you to the bees who taught me everything important. Thank you to everyone here who's been part of this journey. Thank you for honoring work I love. I'm blessed beyond measure. The celebration continued late into the evening. People sat in the meadow as sun set and fireflies emerged. Bees had returned to their hives for the night, but their hum seemed to linger in the air, a blessing over the gathering. Olivia sat with Daniel, watching people enjoy themselves. She felt complete satisfaction. This was success, not money or fame, but community, meaningful work, lives touched, knowledge transmitted. She had built something valuable that would continue after she was gone. Good life, Daniel said simply, taking her hand. Very good life, Olivia agreed. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell and stars emerged. Two old people who had chosen meaning over money, partnership with nature over domination of it, cooperation over competition. They had lived well according to their values. They had no regrets. The bees slept in their hives. The meadow breathed in the night air. Life continued its eternal cycles. And Olivia sat in peace, grateful for every moment, every bee, every student, every hard-won lesson, every sweet harvest. Olivia continued teaching and keeping bees into her mid-80s, though at much reduced capacity. She maintained 3 hives purely for pleasure, inspecting them weekly with help from students. She taught occasional small seminars for advanced students. She wrote when inspired. Mostly, she simply was, present with life, accepting what each day brought. Daniel's health declined more rapidly than hers. He was 92 now, increasingly frail. Olivia cared for him tenderly, grateful for their decades together, accepting that their time was limited. He died peacefully one spring morning in their bed overlooking the meadows. Olivia held his hand as his breathing slowed and stopped. She felt grief, but also gratitude. They had shared 38 years, had built a beautiful life together. He had been partner in truest sense, supporting her work, sharing her values, loving her steadily. After Daniel's death, Olivia questioned whether to continue. She was 84, tired, grieving.
She could retire completely, leave the institute in Emma's capable hands, spend her remaining time quietly. But the bees called her still. Her 3 hives needed care. Students still sought her wisdom. She had a 3rd book she wanted to complete, and she discovered that work helped grief, gave her purpose, kept her connected, honored Daniel's memory by continuing what they had built together. She also found that loss deepened her teaching. She spoke more openly about grief, about accepting endings, about finding meaning in continuing when continuation felt hard. Bees know about loss, she told a grief support group she visited. They lose sisters constantly to predators, to weather, to simple completion of life cycle. They don't stop working. They grieve in their own way, then continue. The hive goes on. Work continues. There's wisdom in that persistence. Her final book, The Beekeeper's Path, a memoir, was published when she was 86. It was more personal than her previous books, telling her story from corporate burnout to transformation to elder wisdom. She wrote honestly about fears and failures as well as successes, about doubts that never fully disappeared, about the ongoing practice of choosing meaning over ease. The book moved many readers. It wasn't a triumphalist success story, but a nuanced account of real transformation, difficult, uncertain, requiring daily recommendation to values, but deeply satisfying. One reviewer wrote, "Morrison's memoir shows that meaningful change is possible at any age, that work aligned with values brings satisfaction regardless of external success, that partnership with nature offers wisdom our species desperately needs. This is essential reading for anyone feeling trapped in conventional life and seeking different path." The book found particular resonance with people in midlife, facing similar questions Olivia had faced at 41. Many wrote to thank her for showing that change was possible, for modeling transformation, for being honest about challenges as well as rewards. Olivia answered every letter personally, though it took months. She felt responsible to people seeking guidance. If her story helped them find courage, she wanted to encourage them directly. One letter particularly moved her. It came from a woman who had been in corporate jobs similar to Olivia's, had experienced similar burnout, had discovered bees, and transformed her life. She was now in her 50s, happily keeping bees and teaching others. "You saved my life," the woman wrote, "not literally, but spiritually. I was dying inside, didn't know there was another way. Your first book showed me. I followed your path, started with backyard hives, learned from local beekeepers, eventually left my corporate job. I've never been happier. I tell everyone who asks, read Olivia Morrison's books. They show that transformation is real." These letters reminded Olivia why her work mattered. She wasn't just teaching beekeeping, she was offering a path to meaning, modeling transformation, showing that humans could partner with nature and find satisfaction through that partnership. As she approached 87, Olivia began explicitly preparing for death. She updated her will, ensured everything was organized for a smooth transition. She wrote letters to key people, Emma, Raphael, close friends, sharing final thoughts and encouragement. She made peace with her life. She had lived fully, had done her work, had contributed something valuable. She had transformed herself and helped others transform. She had served bees and promoted their welfare. She had taught well and passed knowledge forward. She was ready for whatever came next, not eager to die, but accepting it, at peace with completion.
Olivia died as she had lived, with bees. She was in her meadow, checking hives on a glorious morning in June. She finished an inspection, sat down on her bench to rest, and her heart simply stopped. She died surrounded by flowers and bees, doing work she loved, exactly where she belonged. Her memorial was held in the Institute's main meadow, attended by hundreds. The day was perfect. Warm sun, light breeze, flowers blooming abundantly, bees working peacefully all around. Emma spoke about Olivia's teaching. She taught us that bees are teachers, that humans can learn from them, that partnership with nature brings wisdom we desperately need. She embodied these teachings completely. Everyone who knew her was transformed by her integrity and dedication. Raphael shared what Olivia meant to young beekeepers. She was a bridge between generations, connecting ancient wisdom with modern challenges. She showed us that beekeeping is ecological practice, social justice work, spiritual path. She gave us not just skills, but values, not just knowledge, but vision. We carry her teachings forward. One of Olivia's former corporate colleagues, who had reconnected with her in recent years, offered surprising perspective. "I thought Olivia was crazy when she quit her job to keep bees. It seemed like career suicide, like throwing away everything she'd built. But I was wrong. She didn't throw anything away. She gained everything that matters: meaning, purpose, connection, joy. She showed me what success really looks like."
A farmer whose land hosted some of Olivia's hives spoke about her environmental work. She fought for pollinators, for habitat, for sustainable agriculture. She testified at countless hearings, wrote hundreds of letters, educated thousands of people. Because of her advocacy, our county has stronger pollinator protections, thousands of acres of restored habitat, and community of farmers committed to bee-friendly practices. Maya, the young environmental justice activist, honored Olivia's social vision. She understood that bee health and human health are interconnected, that environmental justice and social justice are inseparable, that transforming agriculture means transforming society. She lived these connections, taught them, fought for them. She showed us what it means to be truly ecological, seeing whole, serving whole. Many others spoke. The stories revealed someone who had lived with remarkable integrity, who had aligned life completely with values, who had given her gifts fully, who had influenced countless people toward better ways of living. After the speeches, everyone participated in ritual honey tasting. They passed around jars of honey from Olivia's hives, her final harvest, bottled just days before she died. People tasted slowly, reverently, aware they were tasting Olivia's work, bees' gifts, flowers transformed into gold. The honey was exquisite, complex, floral, perfectly balanced. It tasted like sunshine and meadows, like Olivia's care
and bees' alchemy. People wept as they tasted it, moved by its beauty and by Olivia's absence. As the gathering concluded and people prepared to leave, a remarkable thing happened. The bees, thousands of them from dozens of hives, rose up in mass flight. They circled above the meadow in a golden cloud, humming loudly, creating living mandala in the air. It lasted several minutes, this swirling cloud of bees, unprecedented and inexplicable. People watched in wonder, some crying, some smiling, all moved by what felt like the bees' own farewell to Olivia. Then, as suddenly as it began, the flight ended. Bees returned to their hives. Normal work resumed. The moment passed. But everyone who witnessed it felt they had seen something sacred. The bees honoring their human partner, acknowledging loss of someone who had loved and served them faithfully for over 40 years. Olivia's ashes were scattered in the meadow, among the flowers she had planted, near the hives she had kept. Her body returned to earth, would feed the soil, would support the flowers, would feed the bees in new cycle of transformation. The Bee Wisdom Institute continued thriving under Emma's leadership, now supported by Raphael and other advanced students Olivia had mentored. They maintained Olivia's vision while adapting to new challenges, extending her legacy while making it their own. Olivia's 3 books remained in print, continued finding new readers, continued inspiring transformations. People across the country, across the world, discovered her story and thought, maybe I could change my life too. Maybe there's another way. And when they followed that thought, when they found courage to change, they became part of Olivia's legacy, part of the movement toward more sustainable, meaningful, nature-partnered ways of living. The golden chain continues. Teacher teaches student, student becomes teacher, knowledge flows forward. Bees continue their ancient work. Humans continue learning from them. The partnership between species continues evolving.
In a meadow where Olivia once kept bees, flowers still bloom. Bees still gather nectar. Students still learn. The work continues without her physical presence, continuing because of her spiritual influence. Somewhere, right now, someone is discovering bees for the first time, feeling wonder at their cooperation, recognizing wisdom in their ways, beginning to imagine a different kind of life. Somewhere, a burned-out corporate worker is reading Olivia's memoir and thinking, maybe transformation is possible for me too. Somewhere, a beginning beekeeper is installing their first hive, nervous and excited, starting a journey that might change everything. Somewhere, bees are making honey, flowers are blooming, life is continuing its eternal cycles of growth and harvest, death and renewal. Olivia's path continues calling. The beekeeper's meadow remains. The golden wisdom flows on and on, teaching anyone humble enough to learn, patient enough to practice, courageous enough to transform. The bees remember, the flowers remember, the students remember, and through remembering, Olivia lives, not in body but in influence, not as person but as wisdom, not as ending, but as continuation. The golden chain never breaks, the teaching never stops, the harvest never ends. Sleep now, dear listener. Let Olivia's story wrap around you like honeycomb. Know that transformation calls to you, that meaningful work awaits, that bees offer wisdom if you're willing to learn. Rest deeply. Dream of meadows and hives, of flowers and cooperation, of lives transformed through courage and partnership with nature. All is well. The bees are working. The flowers are blooming. The golden thread continues weaving forward through time, now and forever. Sweet as honey, golden as light, the hum goes on. Sweet, sweet dreams. Years after Olivia's death, a researcher studying successful life transitions interviewed dozens of people who had left conventional careers for alternative paths. One pattern emerged consistently. Many credited a teacher or mentor who had modeled the possibility of transformation. For a significant number, that person was Olivia Morrison. They had read her books, attended her workshops, or heard about her journey from others. Her story had shown them that change was possible, that meaningful work existed beyond corporate cubicles. The researcher compiled these stories into a book about transformation in midlife. An entire chapter focused on Olivia's influence, titled The Beekeeper's Path: How One Woman's Journey Inspired Hundreds. The chapter documented diverse transformations Olivia had sparked. Not everyone became beekeepers, though many did, but all shared common thread: leaving unfulfilling work, seeking meaning, finding it through connection with nature, craft, or service. One man had left law career to become woodworker after reading Olivia's memoir. She showed that career change wasn't just job switching, but life transformation, he explained. She didn't just change what she did for money, she changed how she lived, what she valued, how she related to work and nature and community. That gave me template for my own change. A woman had left teaching career to start organic farm. Olivia's story taught me that success isn't salary or status, but satisfaction and meaning. She gave up financial security, but gained so much more. That gave me courage to make my own leap. A therapist had integrated nature-based practices into her work after attending one of Olivia's bee wisdom workshops. She showed me that nature offers profound teaching for human challenges. Bees model cooperation, sustainable resource use, democratic decision-making. These aren't just insect behaviors, but wisdom applicable to human life. The researcher noted that Olivia's influence extended beyond individuals to systems. Agricultural policies in several states referenced bee wisdom principles she had articulated. Educational programs incorporated her teaching methods. Business consultants used her frameworks about cooperation and collective intelligence. Olivia Morrison's legacy is remarkable, the researcher concluded. One woman who followed her calling completely, who shared what she learned generously, who modeled transformation authentically. Her influence continues multiplying through all the people she touched and all the people they touch in turn.
The book became popular among people contemplating major life changes. It circulated in career transition groups, midlife crisis support forums, early retirement communities. Olivia's story, told through others' transformations she had inspired, gave countless people courage to change. One reader was a 42-year-old woman named Sarah who was drowning in corporate work she hated. Reading about Olivia, the parking lot paralysis, the desperate drive into the countryside, the discovery of bees, Sarah felt the shock of recognition. "This is me," she thought. "Olivia felt exactly what I feel. She was exactly where I am, and she found a way out." Sarah took first steps. She visited the Bee Wisdom Institute, now run by Raphael, with Emma as senior advisor. She took a weekend workshop. She was fascinated by bees, moved by their cooperation and purpose. But Sarah's path wasn't beekeeping, it was herbal medicine. The bees taught her about partnering with nature, about finding meaning in work that healed rather than harmed. But her specific calling was plants, not insects. She left her corporate job, studied herbalism intensively, established a practice providing affordable herba care to underserved communities. She explicitly credited Olivia's influence. "I never met Olivia Morrison," Sarah said in an interview years later. "She died before I discovered her work, but her story showed me that transformation was possible. She proved that you could leave soul-crushing work and build meaningful life. She gave me the courage I needed to change."
Stories like Sarah's demonstrated Olivia's enduring impact. She had lived one life, made one set of choices, but those choices continued inspiring countless others, multiplying effects far beyond her individual actions. This was ultimate legacy. Not monuments or awards, but living influence continuing through generations, knowledge transmitted forward through chain of teaching and transformation. The Bee Wisdom Institute thrived decades after Olivia's death. It had grown significantly, now employing 15 staff, serving thousands of students annually, managing extensive pollinator habitat, influencing policy regionally and nationally. But it maintained Olivia's core values: accessibility, sliding scale fees, scholarships, work trade options, quality, rigorous training, ethical practices, commitment to bee welfare, integration, combining practical skills with philosophical wisdom, technical knowledge with ecological awareness. Raphael, now in his 60s, directed the Institute with deep respect for Olivia's vision while adapting to new challenges. "The world Olivia entered is different from world we face now," he said. "Climate crisis is more severe, bee populations more threatened, but her teachings remain relevant, maybe more relevant than ever. Partnership with nature, sustainable practices, cooperative values, meaningful work. These aren't nostalgia. These are survival strategies for species in crisis." Under Raphael's leadership, the Institute expanded its environmental justice work. They trained beekeepers in low-income neighborhoods, helped communities establish pollinator gardens in food deserts, advocated for environmental policies protecting vulnerable populations.
Olivia taught that beekeeping isn't just hobby or business, it's an ecological practice with social implications. Who has access to green space, to clean food, to natural beauty? These are justice questions. Bees help us see and address them. The Institute also developed programs for children. Bee Bus traveled to schools in underserved areas, bringing observation hives and teaching about pollinators. Thousands of children learned about bees, gained appreciation for nature, some discovering passion that would shape their lives. One girl who encountered the bee bus at age 8 became environmental scientist studying pollinator health. "That visit changed my life," she said. "I saw bees working together so perfectly. I learned they were threatened. I decided then I would dedicate my life to protecting them." The bee bus planted a seed that grew into my career. Stories like this showed how Olivia's influence extended even to people born after her death. Her vision, embodied in the Institute, continued shaping lives, awakening care for bees and nature, inspiring commitment to protection and partnership. In meadows where Olivia once kept bees, flowers still bloomed. The land was protected now, permanently conserved for pollinator habitat and education. Future generations would experience what Olivia had experienced: the hum of thousands of bees, the abundance of flowers, the wisdom of observing nature's cooperative systems. Memorial benches scattered through the meadows bore Olivia's words. "Listen to the bees. They teach cooperation, sustainability, purpose. Their wisdom could save us if we're humble enough to learn." Meaningful work comes from alignment of activity with values. Find what matters to you. Do that.
Transformation is always possible. Start where you are. Take first small steps. Trust the path to reveal itself. People would sit on these benches, surrounded by flowers and bees, contemplating these words, perhaps finding courage to change their own lives. The meadow became a pilgrimage site for people interested in bees, in sustainable living, in life transformation. They would visit, would sit quietly observing hives, would feel something shift inside them, the same shift Olivia had felt decades earlier when Margaret first showed her bees. And sometimes, sitting in that meadow with bees humming all around, people would make decisions that changed everything. Would decide to leave unfulfilling work, to learn new skills, to build different lives. Would begin their own transformations, their own journeys from lost to found. Olivia's path continued calling. Her story continued inspiring. Her wisdom continued teaching. Not because she was extraordinary, though she was extraordinary in her ordinariness, in her willingness to follow what called her completely, but because she modeled what's possible for anyone. She showed that transformation doesn't require special gifts or unusual circumstances, just courage to change, patience to learn, dedication to practice, willingness to serve. Anyone could do what Olivia did. Not everyone should become beekeepers specifically, but everyone could find their calling, could align life with values, could do work that matters, could partner with nature rather than dominate it. This was Olivia's final teaching, the essence of her legacy.
You can change. You can transform. You can build life of meaning. Start now. Start here. The bees will show you how.
In a time beyond our time, when humanity has learned to live sustainably or ceased to exist, bees continue their work. They have been here longer than us. They will likely outlast us. They don't need humans, but humans need them. Olivia understood this. She approached bees with humility, recognizing she was student, not master, partner, not owner. She learned from them, served them, advocated for them. She understood her role, not to exploit bees, but to facilitate their flourishing. This attitude, multiplied through her students and their students, helped shift human relationship with bees from extractive to cooperative. Not everywhere, not completely, but significantly, spreading through beekeeping communities, influencing practices, changing values. In meadows and gardens, on rooftops and farms, beekeepers trained in Olivia's lineage work with bees respectfully. They prioritize bee health over honey production. They manage with gentleness. They advocate for bee-friendly policies. They teach others to value bees as partners. This shift matters. Bees face enormous challenges: habitat loss, pesticides, diseases, climate change. They need human allies who understand their importance and work for their protection. Olivia helped create those allies. Her direct influence touched hundreds, but those hundreds taught thousands, who taught tens of thousands, extending outward in expanding circles. The values she embodied, respect, partnership, sustainability, service, propagated through networks of teaching and practice.
This is how change happens. Not through grand gestures or famous leaders, but through individuals who live their values completely, who teach what they've learned generously, who model alternative possibilities authentically. Olivia was one such person. There are thousands of others, most unknown, each contributing their piece to transformation. Together, they're weaving new patterns, creating different ways of being human on this planet. The bees continue their ancient work, making honey, pollinating flowers, cooperating perfectly, surviving challenges through adaptability and collective intelligence. They don't know about Olivia. They don't need to know. But humans who work with bees, who learn from bees, who advocate for bees, they know about Olivia. They carry her teaching, extend her legacy, continue her work. In meadows where she once kept bees, new beekeepers tend hives. They may not know her name, but they practice values she taught, use methods she refined, share wisdom she transmitted. The chain remains unbroken. Teacher taught student, student became teacher. Knowledge flows forward like honey, golden and sweet, nourishing all it touches. Somewhere, always, someone is discovering bees,
feeling wonder at their coordination, recognizing wisdom in their ways, beginning to imagine different life. Somewhere, a burned-out worker is reading about Olivia and thinking, maybe I could change too. Somewhere, a beginning beekeeper is opening their first hive, nervous and excited, starting a journey that will transform them as it transformed Olivia. Somewhere, bees are making honey, flowers are blooming, nature is continuing its eternal work of beauty and sustenance. And Olivia's path, the beekeeper's path, continues winding through time, calling those ready to hear it, offering transformation to those brave enough to walk it. The golden thread never breaks, the teaching never stops, the wisdom flows forever. Listen, can you hear it? The hum of bees working, the whisper of flowers blooming, the call of meaningful work, the invitation to transform. The path is there, the meadow waits, the bees are ready to teach. Will you answer? Will you learn? Will you change? The choice is yours, the possibility is real, the journey awaits. Sleep now, beloved listener. Let the hum of the hive lull you to rest. Know that transformation calls to you, that meaningful work exists, that bees offer wisdom for those willing to learn. Dream golden dreams, dream of meadows and flowers, of cooperation and purpose, of lives transformed through courage and partnership with nature. All is well. The bees remember, the flowers bloom, the golden wisdom flows. Now and forever and always. Sweet as honey, bright as sunlight, pure as beeswax. The eternal hum continues. Blessed be. Sweet, sweet dreams. The end that is no ending, the harvest that continues forever. Sleep well, dream golden, wake transformed. The beekeeper's path awaits your footsteps, forever and always. Golden. Amen. May you find your meadow, that place where flowers bloom abundantly and bees work peacefully, where nature's wisdom becomes visible, where meaningful work awaits discovery. For Olivia, the meadow was literal, acres of land where she kept bees, taught students, learned from nature. But your meadow might be different. A garden, a workshop, a classroom, a kitchen, an art studio, a healing space. Any place where you do work aligned with your values, where you serve something larger than yourself, where you create something beautiful and useful. May you find your bees, those teachers who show you how to live better. For Olivia, they were actual honeybees whose cooperation and purpose taught her about sustainable work. For you, they might be different teachers: plants, animals, children, elders, the marginalized, the land itself. Whoever teaches you about life, about meaning, about what truly matters. May you find your Margaret, that first teacher who shows you the path, who demonstrates that transformation is possible, who generously shares knowledge and wisdom, the one who says, "Yes, you can do this. Here's how I did it. Let me help you begin." And may you become Margaret for others.
May you generously share what you learn. May you teach without hoarding, support without controlling, guide without dominating. May you be a bridge, helping others cross from conventional life to meaningful life. May you find your Daniel, that true partner who shares your values, supports your work, builds life alongside you with respect and love. Not someone who completes you, you're already complete, but someone who enhances your completeness, who works beside you, pursuing shared purpose. May you have courage of Olivia, courage to leave security for meaning, courage to start over at 40, courage to learn completely new skills, courage to build different life, courage to teach what you've learned, courage to continue when continuation is hard. May you have patience of bees, working steadily without rush, trusting that small daily efforts compound over time, accepting that valuable things take time to create, understanding that sustainable pace matters more than frantic speed. May you have cooperation of the hive, recognizing that we thrive through mutual support, not competition, that sharing resources benefits everyone, that collective intelligence exceeds individual cleverness, that we're meant to work together for common good. May you practice sustainability of bees, taking only what you need, leaving enough for others and for renewal, preparing for lean times, recognizing and respecting limits, understanding that working with nature's rhythms is wiser than fighting them. May you live with purpose that bees embody, knowing your work matters, contributing your unique gifts, serving something larger than yourself, finding satisfaction in work itself rather than external rewards, understanding that meaningful work is its own reward. May you recognize when your current life isn't working. May you have courage to admit dissatisfaction rather than suppress it. May you trust that longing for something different isn't weakness, but wisdom, isn't selfishness, but self-knowledge. May you take first small steps, even when entire path isn't visible. May you trust that path reveals itself to those who walk it. May you begin before you're ready, knowing you'll learn as you go, accepting that uncertainty is part of transformation. May you find community of like-minded souls, people who share your values, who understand your choices, who support your journey without judgment, who celebrate your successes and help through challenges. You're not meant to transform alone. May you extend grace to yourself when you stumble, when you doubt, when you fail. Transformation isn't smooth or linear. It includes mistakes, setbacks, moments of wondering if you've made terrible mistake. All this is normal. Keep going. May you maintain connection with nature, with seasons and cycles, with weather and wildness, with growing things and living creatures. Nature teaches what humans have forgotten. Stay close to it, learn from it, let it heal and instruct you. May you prioritize meaning over money, purpose over prestige, service over status, authentic work over conventional success. These aren't easy choices, but they're choices that bring deep satisfaction, the kind that lasts. May you teach what you learn, share your discoveries, pass knowledge forward, help others who stand where you once stood, be generous with wisdom. Knowledge wants to spread, wants to serve, wants to multiply through teaching.
May you age with grace that Olivia demonstrated, accepting physical decline without losing spirit, stepping back from active work without losing purpose, mentoring younger generation without clinging to control, facing death without fear because life was lived fully. May you create legacy that matters, not monuments to yourself, but contribution to others, not fame, but influence, not wealth, but wisdom transmitted forward. May your life serve those who come after. May your choices light way for others. May you remember that you're part of lineage, learning from those before, teaching those after, carrying knowledge forward through time. You stand on shoulders of ancestors who learned and taught. You're laying foundation for descendants who will build further. Honor both. May you find your calling and follow it completely. May you build life around it, make necessary sacrifices for it, practice it with dedication and joy. May your work be prayer, your practice be meditation, your service be worship. May you understand success differently, not as wealth or fame, but as life well lived, work well done, values well embodied, wisdom well shared. May you redefine prosperity to mean richness of experience rather than abundance of possessions. May you trust the bees. They've been here longer than us, have figured out how to live sustainably, have wisdom we desperately need. Listen to them, learn from them, let them guide you toward better ways of being human. And may you rest well, dear listener. May this story of Olivia and her bees wrap around you like warm honey. May it comfort and inspire you. May it give you courage to change, patience to learn, dedication to practice, generosity to teach. Sleep deeply, dream golden dreams, wake ready to begin your own transformation, your own journey from lost to found, your own path from empty to full. The meadow waits, the bees are ready, the work calls, the transformation beckons. May you answer, may you learn, may you transform, may you thrive. Blessed be your journey, sweet be your dreams, golden be your waking, now and forever. The end and the beginning, the completion and the continuation. Sweet, sweet dreams, beloved traveler. The beekeeper's meadow awaits you. Find your hive, follow your buzz, make your honey, forever and always. Amen. Close your eyes now, dear listener. Feel yourself floating on a cloud of golden honey, sweet and warm and safe. The bees hum around you, not threatening, just present, their ancient song filling the air with peace. You are in the meadow, Olivia's meadow, the meadow that belongs to everyone who seeks it, who needs it, who's ready to learn what it teaches.
Flowers bloom in every direction: purple, yellow, white, orange. The colors seem more vibrant than in waking life, more alive, almost glowing. Bees move from blossom to blossom, gathering nectar, gathering pollen, doing their sacred work. You watch them and you understand. Each bee knows its purpose. Each bee contributes its gift. Each bee works not from fear or force, but from deep knowing that this is what bees do, what bees have always done, what bees will always do. You see the pattern of their work, not random, but choreographed, not chaotic, but perfectly organized. Each bee knows where to go, what to do, how to work with all the others. They're dancing, you realize. Working is dancing. Service is celebration. Olivia appears beside you, not as old woman at end of life, but as eternal teacher, ageless and present. She smiles at you, eyes full of kindness and knowing. "Do you understand?" she asks. You nod, though you're not sure what you understand. Everything and nothing. The words don't matter. The understanding is deeper than words, older than language, true beyond explanation. "The bees will teach you," Olivia says. "Listen to them, watch them, learn from them. They know how to live well, how to work sustainably, how to cooperate perfectly. Everything you need to know, they can teach you." She gestures to the hives, dozens of them scattered through the meadow. Each hive is community. Each bee is individual with unique gifts, but they work together, serve together, thrive together. This is wisdom humans forgot. Bees remember. Learn from them. You want to ask questions, but Olivia is fading, dissolving into golden light. Her voice continues, though she's no longer visible. Find your work, the work that makes your heart sing, that serves something larger than yourself, that uses your unique gifts in service to life. That work is waiting for you. The bees will show you where to look. The light is very bright now, golden as honey, warm as summer sun. You float in it, supported by it, embraced by it. The hum of bees becomes music, becomes song, becomes the fundamental vibration of life itself. You understand that you're safe, that transformation is possible, that meaningful work exists, that you're called to something beautiful and important and true, that courage will come when you need it, that teachers will appear when you're ready, that community will support you, that the path will reveal itself.
All this understanding comes not as thought, but as knowing, not as information, but as certainty, not as hope, but as truth. The golden light fades gradually. The meadow becomes dreamscape, becomes memory, becomes possibility held in your heart. The hum of bees continues even as everything else fades. You're falling now, gently, softly, like a feather floating down, falling through layers of dream toward deep sleep.
The hum follows you down, accompanies you into depths, keeps you safe. You land softly in the deepest place, the most restful place, the place where healing happens and dreams are born. You rest there, completely peaceful, held by the golden hum, blessed by the wisdom of bees. Sleep now, sleep deep and sweet and long. Let honey fill your dreams. Let flowers color your rest. Let bees teach you in language deeper than words. When you wake, you'll remember something important. Maybe not details, but essence. Maybe not words, but knowing. You'll remember that change is possible, that meaningful work awaits, that you're called to something beautiful. And maybe, when you're ready, you'll answer that call. You'll take first steps toward your meadow, your work, your true life. You'll begin transformation that the bees have been humming about since you first listened to this story. The golden path waits, the flowers bloom, the bees work, the honey ripens. Your life of meaning is being prepared, even now while you sleep. Rest well, dream golden, wake ready. The beekeeper's blessing upon you, forever and always, now and eternal. Sweet dreams, sweet dreams, sweet dreams. The hum goes on. The harvest continues, the teaching flows. Sleep, golden, sweet, blessed, forever, now.